put a blog out there, if it gets views and it continues to get views and it starts to rank, then you understand, okay, this is actually successful, it's useful, it's good. Whereas, yeah, if it doesn't, then you understand, okay, this is not what people are looking for.
From a brand perspective, it's something you can use, but the market was like, I want a performance review, I want a goal management solution. And I think there's also this, like, where do you stop with being creative versus what are people actually?
People don't read anymore. So you gotta make it short. Or it has to be like a mega hook. They know what they're gonna get out of it and they know it's worth reading.
How do you convince leadership and stakeholders, be it sales, be it CEOs, be it investors, whatever, of the tangible value that you can bring in the content and brand side of things?
Go to an English site and they're happy with the English site, but they're not necessarily native speakers. I'm not saying that creativity is lost on them, but it may complicate things for them. That's when I have to really ask, is that creativity really worth it for your audience?
When I go on a website, I want to see all my problems pointed out in a way that's relatable, and I want to see how this company solves it. I want to see that this company has solved it for people like me at companies like mine.
How much value are you actually offering in that newsletter? Because if you're not offering value, then yes, you will get unsubscribes.
We are back for the latest episode of Grow with the Flow. Today we have as a guest Adrie Smith. Adrie, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
Love sitting here all forum. We know Adrie really well. So Adrie and I used to work together. So we go back, and it's always funny because it's more awkward to do this with someone you know than with someone you don't know. But we'll ease into it. So quick introduction on Adrie, and you can tell me if I do your profile justice. Clement just knocked the table. So, Adrie, leading content and brand at Trengo.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Trengo is a SaaS, B2B SaaS platform for multi-channel communication, if I'm not mistaken. You were previously the head of content and head of content and brand at companies like Recruitee, which is now Talent, Folion, and also Recoded. And yeah, you're one of the best content experts I know.
Oh, thanks.
Then don't make any secret about it. And yeah, really looking forward to talking to you about this. So thanks for joining us.
No problem. Very excited to be here.
And the way we always like to start these episodes is tell us your origin story. And you can go back as far as you like. I always say we have some guests that go back to when they were like 6 years old. So you don't have to. But how did you get to doing what you do today, and what has your journey been like?
Yeah, I'll try to keep it short. It's yeah, hopefully it's not like a villain story. But yeah, so actually I'll just start when I first got here in Amsterdam, probably around 8 years ago. Didn't really know what I wanted to do. I had graduated with a master's in conflict, security, and development. Obviously, that's very, very different from marketing. I don't think anyone really studies marketing these days anyway, but
both of us also studied international relations.
Yeah, so I guess this is where you go afterwards. So I arrived here in Amsterdam, couldn't really find a job in that space because a lot of the NGOs required Dutch, which makes sense being in Holland. And I fell into agency recruitment. I spent some time at an agency recruitment company, learned a lot, recruited SAP professionals, mostly elderly German men, if I'm honest. Did a lot of cold calling, got a lot of people yelling at the phone. Really, really tough. And I needed to quit, absolutely needed to quit. So I told my boss, said, hey, this is just not working out. And he said, hey, you're really good at this. You seem to like recruitment. And I was like, yeah, but I just don't like the cold calling and the yelling. And he said, well, we've always wanted to hire someone for marketing. Number one, they didn't ever have a marketer because it was all outbound. And they said, hey, why don't you take on this marketing role? So I said, okay, fine. Did it. And yeah, kind of ended up doing their blog, doing their website, doing their social media, and found out that I just really enjoyed it. Also found Growth Tribe along the way, and then figured out, yeah, okay, this is maybe not the right place for me to grow into. So I found then Recruitee, B2B SaaS, and found out that, yeah, that was really the space for me, and I really loved it. And yeah, that's kind of what I've been doing ever since. So I've now kind of focused more on the branding side of things because, of course, content and brand is like really, really intertwined. You need both to do both. So yeah, that's kind of where I am now. So I'm kind of investing a little bit more in the brand side of things. Content is still really exciting, changing all the time, which I'm sure we're going to talk about. But yeah, that's how I got here.
Nice.
Before all this, though, you have an interesting background because you grew up a little bit all over the place.
Yeah.
What was well, for people who don't know you that well, give us like the short list of places you've lived and you grew up, and how that maybe has influenced what you do today, if it has influenced what you do today.
Honestly, I think it makes me a little bit more diplomatic and a little bit more open to new ideas. I'm sure you also experience this as somebody who also grows up in multiple cultures. But
I didn't grow up in open-minded cultures necessarily, though.
oh wait, not
So,
not
hopefully you have
open-minded
the ideas.
cultures, not open-minded cultures, but like
No, I'm
multiple
kidding.
cultures,
Yeah, absolutely.
where you're never technically in your own culture. Let's
No,
just say.
third
So
culture kid.
yeah, exactly. So it makes me a little confused, a little wacky, a little more open to doing weird things. So yeah, not too weird, not too weird.
Nice, nice. Now, I think that also shows. I think there's that. I think that weird is good because weird is different, and I think
Yeah.
most marketing is not weird.
Yep.
It's so kind of bog standard and samey, and
But what I see a lot though is that a lot of really good marketers are a bit weird
yeah,
Yeah.
because they all have
absolutely both.
Definitely.
they need to have that
But you
side
know,
to them to be creative. I think.
But you know what? Like, I think so. In university, I was in the student political magazine, and I actually did the design for it, which is kind of wild, seeing as I'm not a designer. And I remember the editor was always like, "Hey, I think you should really write for the journal." And I was like, oh, I don't know. I don't know if I have anything to say. I don't know if I have anything to comment on. And I think it took me like a really, really long time to actually figure out like I actually have something to say and I have perspective. I'm very opinionated, extremely opinionated. But for some reason, it just took me a really long time to be able to get those opinions on paper and also to get those opinions just out there and not just be kind of bland and being like, oh, yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, it's okay.
We're going to touch upon a very practical example of this when we talk about LinkedIn in a moment.
Yeah, I was interested. To, it's like for me, like I love marketing, but I've always struggled with writing. Like for me, that's always it takes so much time for me to sit down and write and be creative in that part of of marketing. Did you always have that connection to writing, or is that something that came through marketing?
I think I always liked writing. So fun fact, I wrote fan fictions as a teen, which honestly, the more marketers that I talk
Of
to,
what? Of what? That's the most important
I
question.
will not disclose this publicly, but I wrote fan fictions. That's how I will leave it. But I have to say, the more marketers and the more content marketers that I talk to, the more I actually understand I'm not the only one. I'm definitely not the only one. So like, yeah. So I'm just saying like it was I think I've always had that interest, but actually kind of honing that into a skill where you can actually make money out of it. And fun fact, fan fictions don't make any money. So I think like actually honing that into something that you can actually make a career out of takes time and also takes some practice, takes a lot of feedback, and takes actually like a lot of shit writing to begin with. But yeah, that's the great thing about like content marketing and the internet. It's like if you put a blog out there, if it gets views and it continues to get views and it starts to rank, then you understand, okay, this is actually successful, it's useful, it's good. Whereas, yeah, if it doesn't, then you understand, okay, this is not what people are looking for. So you get that feedback pretty much immediately.
Yeah, that's very true. So this path into content marketing, would you say that was then? Was there? Were you? It was kind of a happy accident you ended in marketing,
sure.
right? Because you went into this recruitment space, you ended up in marketing. But once you were in marketing, was it really obvious to you that the content brand side of things is where you would go?
Yeah.
Or is that something that just found you along the way? Or did you then notice, did you start putting that together of, oh, I like to write fan fiction. I'm just kidding. But I like to write and, I'm creative and I have these ideas. And also, that could go really well with this marketing thing. Did you consciously bring that together, or did it just kind of develop? Or
I think it like kind of developed, but I think it also developed in terms of like where my natural skills actually sit. Like when I did the Growth Tribe course, there was like a lot of automation. There was like a intro to how you do kind of like ads. This was like very, very basic stuff because if you remember, I had no background in marketing, didn't know what I was really doing.
I remember I helped build that course.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, you made this today. But I think I have to say, like, I just wasn't good at those things. I didn't enjoy them. No, I think this is it. I didn't enjoy them, so I wasn't good at them. So I think very naturally, it's like, these are the things that I actually enjoy. I enjoy, and it's not just like writing content, because that's not really what content is these days. It's a lot of project management. It's a lot of like idea creation. It's a lot of understanding how like one piece of content can be multiple pieces of content. It's also, I think one of the things that people very, very often miss about content, it's about actually connecting with people, and actually knowing your audience. And that's what I think that's what I really enjoyed at Recruitee, for example, is that I had come from the recruitment world. I knew all these recruitment people, and then suddenly I was making content for them, and I think that made it a lot easier. And then every role that I've had after that, it's all about understanding who your target audience is, getting to know them, and really connecting with them on a one-to-one level. So I think that's actually what it's less about writing. It's less about project management necessarily, and it's more about like actually connecting with people.
Yeah, no, 100% agree. And I think that's something that's underestimated in all of marketing. Is everyone loves to say it's important to know your customer, but then between saying that, doing it, and then actually making it practical, there's a lot of gaps.
Yeah.
And I think most teams don't manage to fill those gaps.
No, I think every time we have this podcast, something around knowing your audience
We
comes
have,
up.
we have it now. Sorry, go for it.
I'm curious, because like I have a question for you guys, because I see this all the time, because you have marketing teams. I experience very often in marketing that, especially in content marketing, you have a lot of introverts. And I think that makes it very difficult sometimes to go out there and get to know someone like from scratch who you've never met before. And I think that's something of the kind of friction with getting to know your audience. No? Do you also experience this at all?
I think there's a couple of things. I think first we see at the top. So if you take more a leadership position, is that they think they know their audience, or they are very focused on, we want to build this for this type of audience, whereas the product is actually not the right use case for that audience, right? It's a lot of times leadership or founders are like, no, we want to sell to enterprise, or we want to sell to big companies. I think that's where it starts. And I think what happens then is you get like this convoluted message that trickles down into the organization. And I think that's also makes it very hard for any marketing team to, or any commercial person to adapt to that. Of course, I do see that content people in general prefer to write instead of to talk to people, because that's a little bit how, not always, but you see that sometimes coexists. But I think it has more to do with the focus. I think you see a lot of times that just they think they know the audience, but they don't. And I think that's where like, oh yeah, they make assumptions and they don't test those assumptions.
Right.
Yeah, I was just going to say before that, the companies we work with, where it's such a basic thing, but just people struggle to think about the experience that their potential customer is having. Like, they don't think about, oh, if a person in my audience lands on my website, what do they want to see? It's such a basic thing. And I think everyone listening, and probably 80% of the people here are like, oh yeah, I do that. But they definitely don't, because the reason our company exists is because companies don't do this well. Right? If everyone did this well, we wouldn't be here. And I see it now, we have one client, when you talk to them, crystal clear idea of who their customers are, crystal clear idea. And you go on the website, it's just not there. And then I went to the website and they had like these 3 testimonials, and the testimonials do not reflect the customers. Like the people in the testimonials are not their ideal customers. And the comments are all about, so they're a marketplace, so there's a software and the service element, and where they struggle to close is the service part.
Right.
Like the software facilitates it, but the service part is the core part that they close on. And they have 50 case studies. I don't know, I'm exaggerating, but they have like 25 case studies, each with a beautiful quote hidden in the footer somewhere. And I was like, why aren't these testimonials on the homepage? It's such a basic, and like, it's always easy to go into someone else's marketing and point out 100 things. You know how it is. You're like, everyone who's building a team and build marketing, there's everyone, like, I've had this with my team, so we've had it with Recruitee. We know that there's things that could be improved.
For sure.
So it's super easy to go into someone else's company and point out what they can do better. But it's really funny to see how often these really basic, if I'm a specific kind of person with a specific kind of need, when I go on a website, I want to see all my problems pointed out in a way that's relatable. and I want to see how this company solves it. I want to see that this company solved it for people like me at companies like mine.
Right.
It's not really that crazy, but I think
Well,
the blocker very often is before the actually going out and talking to people. The blocker is before. I think people often think they're doing way more and doing way better than they are.
yeah, well, I think also with our recent rebrand at Trengo, like we also kind of I made this mistake even, and I think it's interesting to kind of think about it because we designed this brand new website. It looks super sleek. I was very happy with it. Everybody is super happy with it. It looks like a high tech website. The reality is our buyers are not very tech savvy. They're greenfield buyers, and we fucked up. You know what I mean? Like it's you look at this and you're like, shit, this is a little bit too sleek. This is a little like the buttons are a little bit too small. If you're not constantly navigating these kind of websites, then you have to really search for it. We have to make it a lot simpler. So we literally had to go back right after the rebrand and redesign some things just to make them a little simpler, less techy, sleek, because we really forgot our target audience. That was even I do it. And I think it's something you just have to keep checking on. You know what I mean?
I wonder there, this is something that I think you probably experience a lot. Part of the problem, I think, is especially in startups and scale ups, you're just under such pressure to deliver tangible value, which,
Mhm.
if you're the Google ad specialist, it's not that hard to do. I mean,
Mhm.
okay, obviously, it's a generalization, but, if you are in the game of let's put ads in front of people who are ready to buy,
Yeah.
you're going to be able to show tangible, at least leads, pretty
Mhm.
quickly. If you are playing the game of, hey, I'm building a brand presence, which might not turn around results in the next 2, 3 months, it might not be as clearly attributable as some direct channels. But
Mhm.
in the long run, it's the only way any company has ever successfully grown. I see this when we did the brand stuff at 3D Hubs, for example. I was under a lot of pressure to try and leverage information that was already in the company.
Mhm.
So I had to talk to leaders from sales and these kind of things. And I got great insights. But it also meant, if they had been wrong, now, unfortunately, 3D Hubs is a company that pretty much hired engineers in every position. So they were all their own target audience. That was pretty okay.
Yeah.
But if they had been wrong, and I've worked with some companies where the leadership is just totally off base and they just, you just get it wrong. I have had that with my own company in the past, that you're just wrong about who you're targeting. If they'd been wrong, I would have just built an entire brand foundation on false information. And I think that came from the pressure of having to deliver something really fast.
Yeah, for sure.
How do you balance how do you, like, say, very practically, how do you convince leadership and stakeholders, be it sales, be it CEOs, be it investors, whatever, of the tangible value that you can bring in the content and brand side of things?
Oh, yeah. My feeling is that people either believe in it or they don't. And if they don't, then they're going to be stuck in a world where they're always pursuing, I want to say, like lead gen activities, which is fine. People succeed in that world, but that's not how you build a brand that people remember and have an emotional connection with. The I've been really lucky in the fact that, like, I think at every single job that I've had, we always have a leader who really believes in brand and building something that people really like, because I think it does feed into some egos for sure. People want to be proud of their company. They want to have that connection, and I think most really strong leaders understand the value of that, because it's not just like their pride in their own company. It's actually how proud other people, their employees, are, and the rest of the team is. So I've been really lucky in that I have not had to do a whole lot of convincing. Um, but I've also been in-house. So they're also already saving money by not going to an agency. I've also spoken to tech companies that have done big rebrands for 150K, 200K, and it takes about a year to do. And that's what's crazy. I think that's when you need to sit down with a leader and say, like, this is going to be worth that amount of money. But when you have somebody in-house who's doing a rebrand and who's also doing content marketing, who's also doing operational stuff, then it's not that big of a sell, in my opinion.
Interesting. Yeah, for me, I've not been that lucky in that sense. So I've experienced a
Mm,
lot of like pushback on brand or even demand generation, because that's literally also with a lot of work you're doing around the
mhm.
brand, is creating that brand presence and the awareness to generate demand. Um, and I always struggled with, yes, we want the brand, but it shouldn't cost a lot of money, right? That's always a little bit that lever, like that playing field where you're playing it. When you choose your roles, do you try to take these things into account to make sure that you always work with a leader or a manager or somebody who understands the value of brand and content?
Yeah, so I think also going back to my origin story is actually working as the only marketing hire in a completely outbound sales organization really made me think hard about my future
Baptism of
moves.
fire.
Yeah, I think like constantly fighting with my boss to be like, you should let me spend time on making our website a little prettier, a little nicer, a little bit more like punchier with the copy, and changing that copy as well, because people get very attached to what they have and what's worked. Yeah, I think that whole experience really led me to think like, okay, if I'm gonna move somewhere where I can do whatever I want, because I think not I want, but I think that allows me to be creative, allows me to, create really projects that actually grow and you can be proud of. I think for everyone in the team that I work in, I always advise them like, hey, listen, um, you know, increasing your salary is great, increasing your job title is great, but what's even more powerful is if we're able to create a portfolio for you that you can take on in your career and you can be proud of. And so that's also how I've approached a lot of my roles, to really think about like, what does this give my portfolio and what can it give my portfolio? So can it give it a rebrand? Can I make the number one blog in HR tech? Can I, really own social media and point to something where we can say, yeah, it's had this much growth. So I think that's really the most important for me.
One of the things I struggle with a lot is I'm an okay writer. I'm pretty good at synthesizing words. So I'm not the most creative writer, but I'm really quite good at getting clarity out of kind of convoluted messages. And what I mean by that is when we do kind of, when we do messaging exercises with our clients, they're like, well, our mission is sustainability and then changing the world, but there's also this and this and this and this. And then you have to turn that into kind of like a one-liner, something that everyone can understand.
Yeah.
One of the things I go back and forth on is when I see a website with a super creative headline. I think probably my favorite, actually, no, I'm not going to go with a favorite, but sometimes you go online and it's just like, that's cool.
Yeah.
I always have that side of me that wants to make that creative headline that everyone's going to engage with. But then the other side of me just goes, just say in really plain words what you do. Because I see like creativity when it works, it really works. But most people are not smart enough to nail that, or a lot of people like just, you end up with this convoluted messaging where you're like, I don't actually know what this company does. And how do you balance that? I give you the perfect example for me is like I think my favorite headline of all time is meetings off, Loom on. Like that was such a great one because it was creative, but it was also just really clear what it does.
Right.
No more meetings, you can use Loom instead. But it's very hard to nail that balance. How do you go about this and how do you balance the functional with the creative? Because I always find that pretty hard.
Yeah.
I usually advise companies that if you don't have the creativity, at least make it super clear what you do. Like, we are a company that does X for Y, and we're good because of ABC reasons. That's a good starting point. But how do you get that creativity layer on top?
So I'll put one caveat to this. It's like, what I would ask is sometimes, is that creativity actually worth pursuing? The reason I ask this is because most of the companies that I've worked with deal with a multilingual audience. So fine, you have that beautiful headline in English. What are you going to do for French, German, Arabic, German, Dutch, etc.? Like, you have to have that creative. And I'm not saying it has to be exactly, it's never going to be, number one, it's never going to be a word for word translation. For sure not. I would never recommend that. But it makes me really wonder because, especially here in the Netherlands, we have a lot of people who read, go to an English site and they're happy with the English site, but they're not necessarily native speakers. So I'm not saying that creativity is lost on them, but it may complicate things for them. And that's when I have to really ask, is that creativity really worth it for your audience?
Yeah. Also, when if your audience is, I don't know, when we had with 3D Hubs, we had mechanical
Engineers.
engineers. They don't want to hear fluff, or they don't want to hear creativity. They want to hear, these are the tolerances. This is the technical details. These are the specifications, and this is the time we can deliver in. And then they're like, check, 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 check. Okay, I'll place my order.
And I think there's another element to this. I totally agree with you on the language, because I was always the Dutch. I had to translate everything to Dutch, and it sounds so amazing in English, but then I have to try to make that in Dutch, and it takes twice the amount of sentences to say the same thing. And it sounds horrible.
German, forget it.
Yeah, it's horrible. But one thing that I noticed is that also that functionality comes into. So when I started Impraise, they wanted to name themselves the People Enablement Platform. And for people who don't know, Impraise is a performance management tool, but they didn't want to put the word performance management in any of their copy on the website. Nothing. What happened was that people are confused, but also people didn't find us because people don't search for People Enablement Platform. It's a beautiful word, and from a brand perspective, it's something you can use, but the market was like, I want a performance review. I want a goal management solution. And I think there's also this, like, where do you stop with being creative versus what are people actually, what does your product do? And I see that a lot on the homepage. It's like this very fluffy message around trying to change the world, and then you're like, what do you do?
Yeah, I agree. So I think that's also, it's also knowing what content format you actually have in front of you. So your homepage, what's the intent of people actually going there? They don't want, yes, you should give them a taste of your brand, but I think it is very much functional. They want to know what you do. They want to know how it benefits you and what they get out of it, and also how much it costs. I think that's also, not having hidden pricing would be great. But yeah, I think it's just knowing the piece of content that's in front of you and understanding, like, is this functional or is this brand? I think, for example, like a newsletter, you can get much more creative and fun with, because you're not dealing with SEO, you're not dealing with people trying to understand what you do. You're really trying to actually delight them and bring them closer to your brand and have a little bit of fun, I think.
Yeah.
What do you think is the, especially the role of newsletters have changed, have not changed? Like, what is it? You see that people are getting so many emails, and I know it's slowing down already a little bit, but especially in the last couple of years, that outreach through email, if it's not newsletter, it's something else. It's gotten massive. And then on the other hand, now you see so much short-term AI content that people are also not really happy on social platforms. Like, what is your opinion on that shift?
So I think at every company that I've been at, I've put into place a newsletter. I'm a fan. So you're going to be really hard pressed to get me to say, no, I hate newsletters and they're a load of shit. I really like them because they are an opportunity to nurture an audience in a way that is very low effort, I would say. Can be very casual. I think all of the newsletters that I've put together are always casual. They're always more editorial, which is fun. You get to be a bit more creative than, for example, an SEO article, definitely. And I think the role is actually to nurture with low touch, basically. And I think if you offer enough value, and that is the crux of content in general, is like, how much value are you offering? Yeah, exactly. How much value are you actually offering in that newsletter? Because if you're not offering value, then yes, you will get unsubscribes. But I think all of the newsletters that I've have had over a 34% open rate, which is pretty good industry wide. So that's something to be proud of, I guess. But it means that we're offering enough value for people to open it month after month. So I think it's low touch nurture.
What is your view on content in written form in general? Do you think it's a dying art? Do you think it's ready for a comeback? Do you think AI is good? Let's also pull in the AI factor here as well. Do you think that's going to be useful? How can people use it? The content landscape is changing, and rapidly. I personally consume 90% of my content through video and audio, maybe more. I've never been a big reader, so that maybe adds to it. I'm not somebody who sits and reads a book. I don't have the patience. I need to be doing something else at the same time, and I can't read and walk at the same time. That's not a good multitasker, but video and audio that I find super engaging. I guess there's a general trend towards that. More video, more audio, shorter video. What is your view on this? So
Yeah, I do feel that writing is a little bit of a dying art. I'm kind of like raging against the machine because I really do. I prefer to read stuff. So, for example, if somebody sends me a voice note on WhatsApp, I almost want to delete it immediately. Like, just send me the text. Just send me the text.
no, voice notes all the way.
Oh, send me the
I
text.
do
God
voice notes all the time.
Thank God you've never sent me a voice note because you'd be immediately unfriended.
Oh, really?
Immediately, yeah. No, not immediately, but
No,
it's like
but he does it to me all the time. So.
Yeah, I
He
said
knows.
Clement as well. Come on, at 9 p.m. We just had this discussion.
he knows his audience. Knows his audience.
Well, or
So-
not.
In some countries, voice notes are big. Like in Spain, nobody texts. It's like voice messages.
Yeah,
80% of the time, everyone sends voice messages.
But I do feel that people are reading less and less. And again, to go back to my first work experience, let's just say, I remember sending out an email to the team saying like, hey, this is what's changed, kind of a summary of like all the content that they can use, and sent it out. One of my colleagues came to me immediately and was like, I'm not reading this. And I was like,
Oh, wow.
excuse me?
That's harsh.
And she said, it's 4 paragraphs. It's 4 paragraphs. And I was like, well, I have a lot to share. And she was like, no, I'm not reading it. Make it shorter, make it easy, like almost idiot proof. And I think I've really taken that to heart because it's true. People don't read anymore. So you got to make it short. Or it has to be like a mega hook. They know what they're going to get out of it and they know it's worth reading. And I think AI is also changing this. I just went to an event last night about AIO. So the AI overviews that Google produces, and dang, the writing is like on the wall. It's pretty depressing in that like, number one, they are literally going to take your articles and they are going to take a snippet and they're going to make their own overview. And if you win that snippet, then your source will be unbranded, featured there in the AI overview. People will never click on your article. They're never going to go all the way in. They're literally just going to read that overview. I think I'm still missing a lot of stats on like, number one, how many people click on the sources, how many people rely on just those AI overviews. That I have to dive in a little bit more into, but it's clearly showing like people don't want to read the full article. They just want an answer.
But that's also, I guess, also a little bit the nature of search. There's 2 kinds of searches. There's the, how many grams in an ounce, that kind of thing, when you're cooking,
sure.
and then so there's that category, and that can go all the way to, what's the best month to go to Cuba? What's the best play area
For
to
sure.
stay in? And I think
Functional searches.
that's these functional short answer searches, but there are still searches for deeper
Yes.
stuff. And I think that's where probably I imagine AI overviews becoming essentially a more extensive replacement of featured snippets.
Yep.
I still think the search options underneath for people who want to dive deeper are still going to be pretty important, but I do think for some types of searches, people are just not going to have to search anymore.
But I think what AIO is doing is actually not just the functional search. Yes, it answers your initial question, but it actually serves the deep intent of that question. So the deep intent of that question, if I go to the internet and I say, hey, what is growth marketing? Yes, it will give me the 1-word answer, but then it will go on to say, most people learn growth marketing via X, Y, and Z. And then it will go even deeper to say, what can you do with this skill set? So that's an article right there that you could have written.
But that's not a great article. And I think that's kind of,
No,
and I think
sure.
that's really, and you hit the nail on the head when you said, it depends. You said, is it worth reading? And I think the type of content I see still performing are really almost essay-like content, where it's super deep. There's some really clear insights, like reports or essay-like content where, recently, a year and a half ago, so a company shut down. It's like, this is everything I learned from the company shutting down. And some guy posted it. And it was like this, I don't know, it was thousands and thousands of words, but it was so good. So you could just dive into it and read it. I think a lot of the what is growth marketing or growth hacking kind of articles,
or
those
SEO articles.
Those are probably going to die. And there you need to switch over to video or some platform where you can actually still put your face in front of people.
I think I have the feeling that we might are on like a wave. I have the feeling that probably will go back to more long form content, because
Mm.
people are just getting like, you're not learning anything anymore. You see it already with LinkedIn posts, right? First it was like short, like stay as much as you can above the fold, so that people know what you're talking about. But now you actually see a lot of people posting a lot of long form posts with insights. And of course, you know, some do it better than others. But in essence, you see that some people are taking more time to talk about their contents. And you also see it with the like the increase of Substack and people wanting to high quality content. I think especially with AI, I
the
feel
bar is going up.
the
a
bar
lot.
is going up. So the quality needs to be really good, but especially through AI, the quality of content is dropping like crazy. It's horrible.
Yeah.
So I have the feeling that maybe there it's going to be less content, but I do have the feeling that people want something more substantial than just another short that says the same thing, like I was on my wedding and these are the 5 things I learned from it. Like that's the most
Yeah.
of the type of content I see around now, and it's boring.
I don't know. I think it also depends. Like, I think you guys are working in the marketing space, right? You're appealing to marketers. That's your network. I think if you're working in different audiences, it's very different, right? Like the kind of quality that people are looking for varies quite a lot.
Yeah.
So I think that's one. Again, it goes back to know your audience, right? But I do feel that the quality of AI content is so bad.
Oh, it's horrible.
So bad. And I think there's so much hype around it, and I think if you work in content, you're you're tired of it basically. Somebody will tell you like, "Oh, you can do something so much faster by using AI." For sure, if it's your process, if it's kind of working on a step-by-step basis, sure, AI can help you. But for writing, no. Run.
Yeah, and it's also like people don't. I think AI is something you need to prompt really well,
Sure.
and it can give you summaries and like. I use it a lot to get my thoughts in order and to
Yeah.
get me started, because I find it hard to start writing.
Mhm.
Like, so it really helps me to get that first outline and first pass, but then I take it and make it my own.
Yeah.
But a lot of people don't see, and that's what worries me, is that people don't see that the quality of AI content is that poor.
But I almost also see a bit of a danger doing the whole process element of like kind of triggering your thoughts and like putting out a step-by-step, let's just say an outline. AI is great for writing outlines of like, what should I write about? But I think it also discounts your own insights into what that outline should be.
Yeah,
There's
fair.
already a bias in how you
Indeed.
outline a piece of product.
Indeed. So you're already, and not to say like before nobody was recycling content from the internet. That's what everybody was doing. It just makes it easier. But I think the challenge will be actually to add your own insights on top of things, add your own experiences. So for example, like I think I've experimented quite a bit with writing SEO articles with AI, different AI tools. And I'm never satisfied with the result. Number one, prompt. Finally, you get to something that's okay, but then you're rewriting whole sections and also like layering on like real customer stories, real examples. And I think then you get to something that it's okay. It's okay. But did it actually save you that much time?
For some things, I find it super useful. I guess it also depends a bit on the person, right? Somebody who has a really hard time just getting started, sometimes, even if you are just not going to use that overview, excuse me, even if you're not going to use that overview at all, it's just, it turns out something, it's generic, and you rewrite the whole thing, which is what happens 9 out of 10 times when I use AI for any basis. Let's say, and this is more like, let's say for client work, somebody wants like a case study or a piece of content about a product launch. I'll take all the information I have. So I make really extensive prompts and I'll ask it to create a first version. And I'll probably rewrite that entire first version.
Yeah.
Right. And then you could say in terms of writing hours, it takes me exactly the amount of time as if I had written it from scratch. And the output is probably very similar because I've rewritten the whole thing. But at least for my personality type, whatever that label is these days, I would have spent an hour and a half procrastinating, staring at the screen before. So just having, it's the same thing. I find it much harder to write from scratch than to rewrite. So I think it depends on the person. What I really like it for is things like, if I write something and it's just, I need it to be shorter and I'm too in it and I'm too biased and I'm too protective of my own ideas to cut it down. And I'm like, give me 6 versions that are 25% shorter.
Yeah.
That it's for those really specific, or like, oh, I'm missing this word. Give me like 100 synonyms of this word. And then that's like, just give me 500 synonyms or words that I could use here. And that's when I really, it becomes useful. Do you subscribe to this idea that people who don't use it are going to fall behind? Do you think that applies to the content space, or do you think really like the core basics of good content are always going to be very, human and creativity centered, and then the tools are basically an extension of that?
That's a hard question. Number one, I think it's a personal choice whether you decide to use it or not. I don't think you're going to get behind necessarily, at least as it sits right now. I do think that you could make your life a little easier process-wise to work with AI. Whether it's outlining, whether it's synonyms, whether it's brainstorming also. I think that's good, but I also don't think it's necessarily, especially when it comes to, like, for example, brainstorming, I don't think it's a replacement for it at all. In fact, I think we still have quite a lot of like in-person, like informal, I'll get like 3 people together, we'll come up, we just did this for the headline for our website where we said, okay, everybody has to come up with 10 different versions. Let's go. Like even the worst versions, even like the most embarrassing ones, just get them out. And I think number one, positive because it creates connections with your colleagues.
What was the worst one?
I can't remember, but I always buy, whoever has the worst one gets a coffee. So it really gets the worst ones out. And it's funny, right? Like it's a little bit of a competition. Yeah, I can't remember it. Sorry. But I don't think AI is going to be a replacement for these sort of things that do really kind of stir up the creativity and make you think a little bit differently. I think it just kind of amplifies it. You add a few more ideas, but generally speaking, for these creative ideas, not good.
No,
really not.
I think, but the thing that worries me is the perception with a lot of people who are not in marketing that it can.
Yeah,
it's the perception that, like, I literally had a conversation with a CEO. It's like, yeah, we can replace our whole marketing team with AI.
Huh.
Good luck.
Good luck.
Yeah, but just let them do it.
Have fun with that.
I give it 3 months.
Yeah, I love that for you, but no.
I think one of the funny things that, like, let's see if we go a little bit more abstract. We talk about art, like. The idea of AI is that it becomes more and more and more sophisticated, and it's often about increasing quality. And of course, content has to be good quality, but some of the most creative content comes out of like this human imperfection.
Yeah.
Right. Like, how many of my favorite artists, died of drug overdoses or committed suicide.
Right.
Like that's a crazy kind of like analogy, but like a lot of these things, they're weird and like like stuff that in a certain generation you show them, they'd be like, that's rubbish, and another generation just goes crazy about it. There's such a, I don't know if you can replicate that mechanically. Like even if AI totally understands, if you can make it to a point where it totally understands people, then once something becomes a commodity, people become uninterested. So if AI gives everyone the power to create amazing content, well, they're all going to be creating the same kind of content, and it's going to become a commodity. And then suddenly it's different kinds of things that are going to start to stand out. So I think it comes back to understanding who you're writing for, who you're talking to, what they care about, and how you can maybe challenge them a little bit.
So, I mean, if we think about a scenario where everybody can create good content, like it's just good, it's not great, it's just solid, it works fine. Does that mean that we leave space for marketing to become a little weirder, potentially?
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I think it has to bring the creativity back. And I think that's a thing that also worries me. And I think that's all about people reading, people consuming content, writing skills. I think for a lot of younger generations, that's going to be a problem because people don't learn how to think themselves and process information. It's just like,
it comes in, goes out.
Comes in, comes out. And you don't need to think hard about doing something or writing something down, or how do you give an answer, or even like the whole thesis thing about, of course, you can have a whole discussion about how important it is to write a thesis, but I think it's more from the how do you form your brain into being able to come up with certain answers and be able to write them down or just say them. with this AI, because everybody
Well,
just types it into AI and they give the answer for them. I think it's not good for our human brain, if I'm honest.
Well, I think also, like, if I think about like a good content exercise for that, it's like ad creation. So we're talking about like very small, effective copy that's paired with an image. Like if I see some of the best ads out there, they make a unusual connection. So they're not saying like, here's what the product does, buy it. Those are not the best ads. I mean, they might work because somebody's in the mood for buying, but the best ads that I've seen out there make a unusual connection. And when you have AI making those connections for you, you're not practicing making that odd connection, making observations, and you're like, oh, that's how my product relates to this, or this is what my product does for a business or for an individual. This is how it changes their life, for example. Um, yeah, I think for example, like super side ads, I'm not sure if you've seen them, but I get served them all the time. I think they're hilarious. They basically
Okay,
always
yeah.
have somebody in marketing, like obviously a stock photo, and then somebody, the text always says like, "Oh, you thought Alyssa did all those ads in one night? Ha ha ha! It was super side." And I'm just like, yeah, that's a very relatable feeling that this person really has. And I think if you have AI, you would have to prompt it in such a very specific way where you're almost saying like, I already know what this
You
connection
can't.
is.
You're already
Yeah.
you're doing the creative
You're doing
work
the
for
work.
it.
Yeah,
No, you
so
don't
like
need AI.
just do it yourself.
I had a sort of good example of this the other day. I was in Cologne over the weekend and plastered over the entire city. So I guess they're international, but so there's a really big in Germany. There's a company called Iglo, and they do fish fingers, basically. You know, like good old classic breaded fish fingers, like which we all had as kids
Yeah.
and probably haven't had since. And plastered all over the city is this ads, and it's basically fish fingers and a kind of create a shape. And the headline is, we'll translate it from German. It's emergency help kit, emergency help set for stressed parents. That basically, instead of talking about, fish fingers aren't about being tasty or good, it's about parents who just don't have time to cook for their kids.
Yeah.
That's the job to be done.
Yeah.
That's that creative connection. What you just say, like, that's not what you think when
Yeah.
you think fish fingers, but that's actually what it's for.
Yeah.
Like it's not gourmet. It's not like grown-ups don't really make them for themselves. I mean, at least not the ones that I know,
Yeah.
not as commonly, but that's the real reason.
We need to
Conscious
move
of the
on.
time, we have now the next section. Next section is we have a rapid fire section at the end. This is not rapid fire, but these are short answers, and we ask these to every guest because we want to create all kinds. You talked about reusing content.
Mhm.
Our plan is to take all these answers and create new pieces of content out of it in the future.
Nice.
So how 6 people think about this topic, these kind of things.
Okay, nice.
Cool. Let's start with the first one.
Take it away.
What's the controversial opinion you have within this space?
I'm not sure if it's controversial, but like, stop bidding on other competitors' branded ads. Like, just stop. Why can't we all stop spending money like this? It's so stupid. Is it controversial? Is that controversial?
Yeah, I think most companies do the branded
Yes.
ad thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they have to.
They have to.
That's a bit of a
Like,
it's a
why don't-
self-fulfilling prophecy at the moment.
Why don't we all like make a truce and say like, let's just not do that?
We used to do this at Recruitee. We used to reach out to companies
I've done
and
it
we'd make a
literally.
truce.
I've done it literally at every single company, and I'm like,
You have to.
yeah,
It depends again on the space. Some spaces are it's all about competition, and there it's like, I get it, but most spaces with Reveal, my the company I founded before, like we had another company that wasn't us that had just not handled their negative keywords well, so they were bidding on our brand. They didn't do the same thing; they just had a similar name, and we messaged them like 50 times, like, stop bidding on us. Like it makes no sense.
Yeah.
And we're not going to bid on you because it brings no value. You're just wasting money, and you're wasting our money. So I relate.
yeah.
Yeah, it's frustrating, but it's yeah. I think we should stop, but people won't stop because it's an easy way to get traffic.
Yeah.
Okay. What's your most favorite fail? Like if you look at your career, like
Oh,
We usually say your biggest fail, but
Biggest
some people don't like to
favorite.
talk about their biggest fail. So if it's your favorite fail, that's also okay.
oh, I'm not sure if I have one. Do you know any of my
Oh,
fails?
don't be that person who's never failed.
No. I've definitely failed. I think I just like really black them out. Just like really.
I have the same. I think if you have a healthy attitude towards failure, this answer is really hard. This question is really hard to answer but everyone has some fuck up.
Oh fuck.
You talked about the rebrand one.
Yeah. Okay, so we did this whole rebrand. Oh no, actually, I don't know. That's a very embarrassing one.
It's fine. We've had some pretty embarrassing
Okay,
ones.
We've
okay,
had some
okay.
embarrassing.
For SaaS, this is very embarrassing.
Uh,
Might not get me hired ever again. Um,
Let's
so
see. Let's find out.
yeah. So for our rebrand, our most recent rebrand, we rebranded everything like internally, externally, got the whole website done with like a team basically of 3 people.
wow.
It was insane. And so by the end, we were like just so handled all the redirects. Technically, it was set up well. And then there was like we had done this recent change from a register page where you could do a free trial to a demo page, so no more free trial. And I forgot to set up the redirect from register to get a demo, which meant that like all of those links like everywhere across the internet that were leading to a free trial, which was our number one source of demos then, was not redirecting for a weekend.
Oh, that's okay.
That's okay.
We've heard worse.
Okay.
We've heard
You-
spending 80K on content that didn't convert, these kind of things.
Yeah,
So.
or we had one of our guests say that he went on a enterprise sales call with 8 people, including C-level people, and then at the end they asked what the pricing was. He said, "Oh well, like €9 a month." Still my favorite one to this day. So,
Dang.
well, thanks for sharing. That's always great when people share. People want to hear how others have failed. So that's
Yeah, that was.
and I've definitely made mistakes like that before as well.
Yeah, that was like pretty horrible.
Who do you learn from the most?
Mm. I actually had a subscription. I no longer have it, but I do follow him on LinkedIn, John Bonini, for content. He posts a lot of stuff, but he also had a paid Patreon where he used to post loads of stuff, like really like in-depth how-tos, really good community as well. And I learned a lot there. And then he stopped posting as much. Dude, you got to post. And yeah, so I stopped following, but for a really long time, that's where I learned the most content stuff.
Cool.
What's your favorite tool for 2024?
My favorite tool. I think I'm still like an Asana girl, that's really lame. I'm
Massive Asana fan here.
like, I'm just,
Yeah,
you know what?
it works.
You know what? It works. And like content can be so effing complicated. There's just so much going on. And I feel like I've gone into a lot of teams where it's just chaotic because people let it be like they let chaos reign. And Asana makes chaos manageable. Puts it in list form.
You should.
Puts it on a Kanban board. You know what I mean? Like that's satisfying.
I know. I love it. I'm on your
just keep
side.
it simple.
I think
Keep
you
it
should
simple.
pitch that headline to them and be a whole campaign called Asana Girls. Like there's so much potential there.
I think there are quite a lot of them.
I would love to be a brand ambassador for Asana.
I'll take the t-shirt.
Hit me up,
Come on,
please. Yeah.
let's do it.
Awesome. Then one of our favorite chat segments, every podcast episode, we try to have each person, host and guests, share a facepalm and a kudos of the week. Facepalm being something that we saw that we think is kind of lame or we want to call out and we want to kind of shun publicly. Shame. And then we have the kudos. So, also keep it positive and call out something positive. So guests first. Mm-hmm. What is your kudos? What is your facepalm, or other way around?
My kudos is I saw recently on LinkedIn, Estrid, the razor brand.
Oh yeah.
They called out Gile for buying their Dutch URL. So it's estrid.nl, and Gillette bought it and then redirected it to Gile. So they put this whole thing being like, hey, it's really flattering that you think of us. Thanks for doing this. But, we're a small brand. You're a big brand. Wow.
Such a
very cool.
move.
Like, very cool of you to do that. And I was just like, yes. It kind of goes along with the same, like, yeah, don't bid on competitors' brands.
So it's a kudos for Estrid and a facepalm for Gile,
yeah, basically. Basically, it's a 2-in-1. Like, you're a big brand. You don't need to do that petty stuff. So, yeah.
Do you have a separate facepalm?
Separate facepalm is I recently saw an ad that was like, using some very meta ad copy, which is like, we saw that you are on our website.
Stalker.
Like, that's why you're getting our ad. And I was like, guys, like, wow, you like really scraped the bottom of the barrel for this copy. Like, get some creativity. Go out into nature. Go do something. Don't sit at your computer screen and do that.
Yeah, even at least just put like a little like creepy stalker photo on there, and then make
Yeah,
fun
make
of it.
it
funny. Make it like a meme or
extra
something.
weird.
Yeah.
If you're gonna go weird, go extra weird.
Put the guy from You on there, like, I saw you visited the
Yeah,
website.
that's actually got a good one.
Yeah, there you go.
should try
Boom.
that.
Yeah.
Jolene.
Yeah, my facepalm is actually I have this love-hate relationship with LinkedIn.
Your facepalm is always
yeah,
about
it's always
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn, but they have a new tool. Like, have you seen the catch-up function? It's so.
Is it the where you click on where you think you get a new notification? You think you got a new connection, but actually it's like someone's birthday or something?
Yes.
Okay, the birthdays. Get rid of the
Yeah,
birthdays.
I know.
I got like a million birthday messages. None
Who
of them.
cares?
None of them
No.
are people that I know. Get rid of it.
No,
Weird.
so literally, because we're posting a lot, and of course I love LinkedIn for the posting and the community and these kind of things, but especially once I've posted, I want to see how my post is and like how people are using it, is being engaging. And then every time now I get like these notifications, and they're like catch-up notifications about things that I don't care about. I'm
Someone
like,
wants to be my friend. Oh, it's someone's birthday. Fuck.
yeah, every time. So sorry, it is LinkedIn again. It's like, it's not taken out. It doesn't
All
work.
right, and the kudos.
Kudos, actually, we have a new client. I don't know if I'm not going to name the name, but we always do it. One of our first session is a deep dive for us to understand, really to delve deep into personas and ICPs and their use cases and what they're struggling with. And he built a whole Notion page for us that we can read. Like,
Wow.
he prepped it, he gave his ideas, he looked at all of our content and actually used some of the formats that we use to fill things out, just as a prep for that call. And I didn't.
He listens to the podcast.
He listens to the podcast. He knows who he is, but he didn't. I didn't ask him to, because normally we don't.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Here's my whole Notion page," and I was like, oh my God, that's so nice. Yeah. That's so, and it will also help us a lot, but also just, I think that's great. If you want to start, like, for us, it really feels like they really want to get started.
Well, also, if you want to start any project, Notion. Create a Notion.
Yeah. My facepalm has to be the whole, no, I didn't do this last week. No, that was Slack last time. The whole thing about Adobe, like, they changed their terms, and the terms kind of implied that everything you create, Adobe can own and use and do whatever they want. And then I was Belsky, whatever the guy whose company was Behance, the founder of Behance, who's now like the VP of product or something at Adobe, had to release this whole. They had to release this whole thing to like damage control, massive damage control. I like fair play for the damage control, but it was just such a massive fail. Like, we're entering an era where we've gone from data privacy hysteria with the GDPR, where people were going way overboard, to like this counterculture of screw everyone's data, we do whatever we want. And we've seen this with Slack and, like, AI, I get it, it's important, but you got to respect people's shit. Like, that's as simple as that. You can put that on a banner, on a t-shirt. Kudos, as the kind of like the fixed host of this podcast, I always have to have an extra kudos. So I start to struggle, but my kudos goes to Peter Schilling, who is a German musician who in the 80s released a song called Major Tom. And for the Euros in Germany, they spent who knows how much money to make the official Euros song with One Republic and the German artist called Leonie. And in Germany, everyone was like, nah. And then Adidas made this one ad with this song Major Tom, and You'll all know the song if you've seen Breaking Bad, because that scene where they find Gail Bedeker's video of him making the terrible karaoke rendition of it. This song has just exploded because of that Adidas ad, and now it's the official goal song of the German national team. And it's just this song from the 80s has just exploded in Germany and starting to explode worldwide again. So kind of kudos to him. I always think it's funny when artists who made a song 20, 30, 40 years ago just suddenly make this comeback. So that's always good fun to see.
Nice.
It's kind of marketing related, right?
It is. Well, Adidas did a good job.
Yeah. All right. Conscious of time, we got two more things. First, we have explained that LinkedIn post. So we're going to have the LinkedIn post coming up on the screen in a sec. And basically, we've touched about this, but I'd just like to know, like, what is your biggest learning? And the LinkedIn post, essentially, you talk about after months of hard work, you've released this new brand.
Yeah.
How did it feel when it went live? I'm guessing good, but how did it feel? And what are what was surprising about the process? Surprising learning or surprising challenge, or what surprised you about the process?
So first question was, how did I feel? I felt like anticlimactic. It was kind of like, that
Done.
it's done. Like, we had a little bit of like clapping, got lots of kudos, of course, from people. People were really impressed, really happy, which is always a good sign, very satisfying. But I also like immediately went on vacation. Like literally like the
I'm
next
done.
day, I was like, I'm out, I'm done. And so when I made that LinkedIn post, I was like, okay, I have to say something professionally. And as you said before, for somebody who works in content, I don't really post very often, which I probably should do more of, but I don't know, you get tired of writing, you get tired of like creating content. So then when it comes to you don't really want to do it. So, and then also I think the most difficult part was actually really in a concise, easy to process, simple way, saying what this whole process was all about. I really struggled. I was like, it's been too long, too much, too many people, like a lot of stuff, a lot of learnings. How do I consolidate this into one post? And I was like, I think if you've done one before, you know the feeling. So I'm just going to leave it at that. It's like, if you know, you know. That's it. Of course, giving like a shout out to the people who really, really helped. And I think that's the biggest, that was honestly the biggest learning in this whole process, because I think a previous rebrand I had done with Recoded, we worked with an agency. Really, they did an amazing job. Really loved working with them. You really felt like they were your partners. Like we did a little work, they did a little work. It was great. It was a great collaboration. Whereas this was very much in-house. We hired some like really great freelancers, and
You used our designer.
yeah.
Well, not through us, but she's amazing.
She's amazing.
Don't promote her too much.
I know.
But we need to keep her available for
I
our projects.
know. I'm still using her, and I'm like, please don't leave.
That's why she wasn't available for this thing I asked her to do yesterday.
I got her now. But what I realized is like, with a small team and with the right people, with the right expertise, you can really create something really great. And you can do it, I think we did it in less than 6 months, which is crazy when you think about like the in-house team working on it was 3 people. And
you did full, not just a website.
Yeah,
it's everything.
We had a part-time designer, like graphic designer. We had a brand designer who also helped out. And then we had a developer. And then in-house, we had a designer, a content marketer, and myself.
You have a meeting in 10 minutes.
Oh, fun.
So we're going to rapid fire. So this is conveniently the rapid fire section.
Okay.
And then we're done.
And you're going to have to run off. Well, you can do the meeting here as well, but then you're going to have to scurry on off to your meeting. Over to you, Jillian. Rapid fire questions.
Okay. Just 1 or 2 answer questions. Like,
okay.
It's very, very, very short. Content or brand?
Brand.
Content or copy?
Content.
SEO or thought leadership?
Thought leadership.
Downloadable gated content, yay or nay?
We do it, but nay. I hate this. I saw an argument about this the other day, and I'm like, oh, I get it. It's hard. But yeah, nay.
Oh, I love that. What's the brand that you really admire?
Oatly.
Oh, yeah.
I really like Oatly. I think they're fun. They're weird. They've fucked up, but I still like them.
Nice. Any book, especially around your expertise, that you can recommend for our listeners?
Oh. The brand storybook. Really good.
Yeah.
Structured, easy to follow, works. That's it.
Great.
That's it.
Adrie, anything you want to promote to our listeners before you head on off to your day-to-day?
No.
Follow Adrie on LinkedIn. She never posts there. But sometimes she does, and when she does, it's good. So
That's
follow
true.
her, reach out to her, and I'm sure any aspiring content people, if they reach out to you, you'd be happy to
definitely
say hi. So thank you very much for joining us. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
As always.
Thanks for having me.